All right. Hey, Dave, thank you for joining us. Uh, so today we have a real titan of the industry. Dave has built over 120,000 homes and he has managed over 1.8 billion in construction costs. So we're here to uncover and to learn about his journey in the real estate industry and to uncover some of those strategies and secrets that he can help us and all benefit from. So, Dave, why don't you start introducing yourself?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that, David. As David stated, my experience dates back just over 50 years. And during that period of time, my background included a vast cross section of the construction industry, starting with, material supply and distribution. That portion culminated with me being the president and CEO of a $1.2 billion building material distributor. From there, I transitioned into CDK, which is what I'm doing today, and worked with the country's largest national home builders, assisting in the design and value engineering of about 120,000 homes. In addition to that, back in 2010, I pivoted and started developing a process to assist multifamily and hospitality developers to reduce their cost and achieve a better return on their projects. And since that time, we have completed 64 multifamily developments and 38 hospitality projects. And as far as CDK is concerned, what we specialize in is pre-construction and procurement services, identifying opportunities to reduce costs for these clients.
Amazing. Cool. And so, in today's environment, that as you know, like there's rising costs and there's inflation. What would you recommend current developers to help them thrive in this new market?
Well, I think probably the single biggest opportunity for any developer is to understand that there are different ways to go about doing what seem to be very conventional and traditional processes. And what I mean by that is typically a developer will go out and contract with an architect and design firm. And although the architect and the engineers involved are highly skilled and develop what are wonderful looking projects. However, what the developer has to understand that those can come at a cost, not so much of the design, but for the aspects of the design that don't enhance the tenant experience. So what I mean by that, what we focus on when we work with developers, architects, and engineers is what's behind the walls. How is the structure developed? What's the size and configuration? We don't cut back on the finishes or the tenant experience. We focus on costs associated with wall assemblies, floor assemblies, roof assemblies, because there are dozens of different assemblies that provide the same UL listings, provide the same fire ratings, but may have significantly different costs for both material and labor. So that's number one. The developer can really manage his costs if he's aware of the design process. And what I always recommend to a developer, I would ask those that I'm interviewing to be part of my design, what are the costs associated with these wall assemblies, floor assemblies, and how do they select those when designing a project? So that's number one. Number two, falls under the general contractor. That's then the second area that the developers defer to a third party to determine the cost of their projects. When I started doing multifamily, only 1 out of 12 projects that a developer spent money on came to fruition. And the single biggest reason was the fact that what they had in their pro forma, they couldn't achieve through the bidding process. The projects were coming back much higher. And the reason for that, there's a lot of reasons for that. But general contractors, like architects and engineers, have their comfort zone. They're successfully stuck, so to speak. And they'll go about bidding a project the same way they bid it for the past 20 years. Same suppliers, same subs, etc. And, the world has changed a lot. In particular, over this last 20-year period. And what we have found is that you can't just go with the status quo, okay? You have to be creative. And I'll give you one example of a cost savings that we deliver pretty consistently. If we're bidding and helping a client that's in the Northwest, and framing costs in the Northwest run $12 to $16 a square foot. Montana specifically is a market that I'm speaking of. We went out and vetted framers in markets in which the cost to frame a structure is more like $6 to $8 a square foot. Texas primarily. And so we would interview framers, we would select those that were competent and capable and negotiate with them to come to these other markets at a cost of $10 to $11 a square foot. What that does, they get paid more than they are in their current market. They have to cover their housing and relocation costs, but that's a small portion of that fee. Maybe that's $1 embedded in that. And it reduces the cost of the project in the market that we're doing. And we've been very successful using that strategy for drywall, for paint, for framing, particularly those floor covering. So a number of those subs.
Amazing. Yeah. And with your deep operational background, where do you see technology playing a role in all of these? And what do you think is the next technology breakthrough
Well,
in the pre-built?
Well, I think a couple of things. Number one, as we all probably know today, because it's been around for a while now, BIM was a big breakthrough, right? So, developing projects in 3D. We utilize the 3D technology for a portion of the work that we do, primarily the framing of a structure. Because when we do a very specific and detailed lumber takeoff, we virtually frame it because of the complexity and the amount of parts and pieces to frame a building, right? There's literally tens of thousands in each building. As far as AI is concerned, the purpose that we've seen benefiting AI today is, with every call you're on, a lot of OAC, which are owner, architect, and contractor calls during this process of construction, typically are on Zoom today, and they get recorded. And AI can be a wonderful source of organizing notes, following back up on discussions, providing comparisons between projects, things that in the past had to be done manually, were extraordinarily time consuming. And honestly, typically we didn't have the time to go in at that level of detail. We've actually loaded in a set of construction drawings, and then as there are ASIs, architectural changes to the plans during construction, reload the new sheets, and AI in minutes can give us a reasonably accurate comparison to the changes that occurred and the areas that should be highlighted for additional review. Again, these are things that depending on the complexity of the project and the amount of change, could literally take someone on your staff days, if not a week, to go through and accurately assess. So to me, those are the big breakthroughs that have occurred.
Makes sense. Yeah. No, it's amazing how technology can be used to enhance your operations now. So, in your experience and working with different developers, what do you think is the one thing that is holding them back from scaling from like building 20 to say 200 a year? And are there things that AI can help automate to help them scale?
Well, I think the biggest holdback in most cases is how are they too risk adverse, right? If you're doing a project or you're building 20 units, whatever that number might be, single family homes, small multifamily project, et cetera, and you're looking to scale up 10 times that, you have just put a lot more of financial risk potentially, right? As well as operational risk on you've taken on. And I think based on some of the points already raised, meaning how you go about working with architects and general contractors, you can mitigate some of that risk. Okay. You can truly control it. I tell the clients that I first start working with, you actually control the cost more so than any other factor in the project, even though you may not know the costs. And the reason I state that is goes right back to the two examples I gave you. You have to be able to understand, ask the questions, right? What is the first question you should always ask? Why, right? Have somebody give you an explanation to that so that you fully understand what's driving your cost. And I think that's the biggest thing. People fall into a level of comfort. They become successfully stuck. And taking that next step is risky. But if you believe in what you're doing and you have a good solid process, you should be able to do so. And as far as utilizing AI, that's the other thing that I'm starting to utilize it for. We are putting in all of the costs from the projects that we've been doing and running a lot of analytics. Okay, so that we can actually see not just that the difference in a specific scope varies by project, because it may because of detail, but give us the breakdown of what the detail is that's driving the difference in the cost, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. And so we're working with a combination of things. We're looking at the scope as well as the cost, and that could be very valuable.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's amazing. What do you any lessons learned that you wanna share that would help like current developers or up and coming developers and investors?
Well, I think, boy, there are a lot of lessons
You
out
got too
there.
many.
Yeah, and I think the main one, honestly, and I'm sorry for being a little bit redundant, but they just follow the sequence of things that we just discussed here, is
Mhm.
understand that things are changing. If you keep doing things the same way as you have in the past, you shouldn't expect a different result. You should not expect a different result, right? Because you're doing it the same way. So you have to make change if you want a different result. And don't make change just to make change. Make it intelligently and analytically. Okay. Take control, dig in, ask why. Okay. Why are we doing it that way? Why did you choose that? And really pressure those decision points. I shared with you on one of our first discussions that during this past year, there's been lots of talks about tariffs and there's been
Mhm.
increases due to oil costs and everything else. And we've got clients that have been working with general contractors that say, aggressively, we can build a multifamily project for, 230 to $250 a square foot. And they feel really good about it. Well, I have 3 projects under construction right now, and they're all under 200 a square foot. And these have very high end finishes. They're beautiful, okay? They have pre-finished exterior sidings, they have solid surface countertops, they have plywood carcass cabinets that have beautiful finishes. There's nothing about these that take away from the tenant experience. And the reason we're able to do that is because we are implementing and executing on the items that I've shared here today.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Dave. What comes next for Dave with all the experience and everything that you've done? Any current and future projects where you're working on?
Well, I've got, a few clients that I continue to work with, but I'm at the point in my career today that what I'm looking to do is research and develop a different service that I can make more readily available to more developers. And that service wouldn't be as much an implementation strategy as I just described. It would be, hosting a group of developers on, monthly calls and then allowing those developers to schedule individual one-on-one calls with their team and myself to review and discuss specific challenges that they're either reviewing in the start of a project, they're incurring during a project, etc. For me, I think that would be very rewarding and very filling because I'd be able to touch on many more projects in an
Hmm.
important way. Because the truth of the matter is, oftentimes those solutions are fairly obvious, right? And if you may not recognize them if you haven't had the opportunity to have shared in resolving those type of issues in the past. And I have to believe that I've pretty much seen most anything that could be thrown at you at this point when it comes to, the multifamily hospitality and single family
Hmm.
construction challenges.
Thank you so much, Dave, for all those insights. Really appreciate it. Now, what you do have like a staggering guarantee. You say for every $1 invested in your procurement services, you guarantee at least $8 return in hard construction savings
That
and
is
cost savings.
correct. That is
So,
correct. So we
so for
we offer.
syndicators,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
and active developers that are listening, who is your ideal client and how can they work with you?
Well, the first part is they have to have already bid a project, been provided, an RFP or a proposal from a general contractor so we know the basis of the cost of the project, right? And assuming that cost was too high, or else there wouldn't be a reason for them to be coming to me. We provide that 8-time guaranteed return on our investment. So just to keep things relatively simple, if our fee happened to be $100,000 for a given project, depending on the scope and everything else, we're guaranteeing them that we will reduce their cost by $800,000. If that doesn't occur and we only reduce it by, I'll keep the math easy, by 400,000, then our fee drops to 50,000. So it's a guaranteed return. With that guaranteed return, though, however, we also have a little kicker for ourselves that say anything above that, we share in the additional savings with the developer. So that's an incentive for us to continue to go and seek savings beyond the 800,000 because I've had clients actually say to me in the past, well, okay, so you go in and you find 800,000 and you're done because you covered your fee? And theoretically, the answer is we could, but we don't. So we've added this caveat so that everybody feels comfortable that we're going to keep working hard to reduce costs. We've averaged, depending on the type of multifamily project, but between 12 and 15% savings when a client comes to us with a pre-bid project and says they need help reducing cost.
Amazing. Cool. And what do you think it's a task that you have to do? It's a value add task for you, but you would want to not focus on. because you'd rather be doing something else. It's something that technology could replace.
If I understand the question correctly, some of the value added tasks that are extremely time consuming is raking through the construction documents, right? Looking at all details and determining, because then you have to do a quantitative analysis, right? So if I look at something and say, this doesn't look like it's a cost effective way to do it, I then have to identify what would be the alternative method. And then what's the cost between the two so that it gets quantified. Because in most cases, an architect, an engineer, or the developer will ask the question, okay, if we go in and change these documents, what are we going to save? And that is probably the most laborious part of what we do and why most don't do it. Okay. The easier value engineering items come from being able to identify during the bidding process alternative subs, maybe alternative materials that meet the same spec, but are more cost effective.
Yeah, sounds good. Hey, Dave, so anything else do you want to share with the audience and how to communicate with you, how to work with you?
Well, we're always open in discussing and meeting with any developer who would be interested in discussing how CDK Enterprises can assist them in lowering their costs. I can be reached at Dave at C as in cat, D as in Dave, K as in kite, I as in ink, N as in Nancy, and C as in cat.com. Dave at cdkinc.com. And I'd be happy to have a conversation with any interested developer or investor out there.
That's great, and we'll make sure to add that in the episode notes for you to get your contact information out there.
Perfect.
Dave, thank you so much for your time today. This was very insightful.
All right. My pleasure. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.